as The Redemption of Jose Silverberg. I should warn you, there is rather explicit language. I'm not sure what implicit language is, but there is rather explicit language here. So if you are easily offended, apologies in advance. From Sex, Lies, and Literature by Ashton Martin Smith and Wesson Boyle. And it was determined that there were, in fact, no donkeys involved in any part of Constantine's narrative. Still, that didn't keep the rumors of subtextual bestiality from circling the academic campfires. These rumors, fueled as they were by Senator Jimmy Falmouth, R. South Carolina, who had once made a name for himself as a televangelist, persist to this day, and can be found still surfacing in various critical journals and college study aids. Fortunately, both of us were present at the Senate subcommittee hearings on decency in literature. We had been called as expert witnesses due to our seminal work on the erotic naming conventions in the novels of Charles Dickens. The phallic pip, coming short of great expectations. We were never asked a single question. Scheduled before us was the renowned expert on all things Montgomery Constantine, Jose Silverberg, whose tell-all work, the Juanita Files, was only rivaled by the Bible and Juanita itself in terms of sales. He had recently come under fire for discrepancies between his account of Constantine's work and recently discovered journals, but he still held some clout in those days, and may have even gained some had he not fallen off the radar shortly afterward. Some say he simply walked away. Tensions had run pretty high in the first few weeks of hearings. Poets and writers, Nobel laureates, paperback hacks, librarians, academics, members of the Society of Women Scholars, and religious leaders had all paraded in front of this panel of junior senators and the brimstone caterwauling of Senator Falmouth. It was slightly before lunch when Silverberg was called to testify before the committee. He slouched in his chair, wearing a patched and scuffed sports coat frayed along the cuffs, over a t-shirt proudly displaying a seven-fingered leaf that looked nothing like Mabel. His platinum blonde hair had faded to white and was slicked back with enough product to make it gleam in the hot lights of the committee chambers. He looked perturbed, presumably at being woken up before lunch.
Mr. Silverberg,
Senator Falmouth began.
I take it we are graced with the self-appointed expert on all things Juanita.
Silverberg shifted in his chair slightly before slouching farther forward to get his mouth near the microphone. Yes.
Then you are quite aware of every lurid and perverted bit of text in this so-called book of literature?
I am.
So you do not deny that this so-called masterpiece is filled with all sorts of sexual depravity involving an older man and a girl not yet past her pubescence?
I don't, Silverberg said, seeming to maintain his reticence. Before Falmouth could speak, however, Silverberg continued with, just not as much as you believe. Falmouth flipped through his photocopied version of the text. From the audience, we could see that many portions of it had been highlighted in yellows, blues, and greens, leaving very actual black on white. Falmouth's brow had begun beading with sweat. He found the page he was looking for.
I submit to you, Mr. Silverberg, this succulent creature stretched out into a bed of mud. Sunbeams filtered through the gaps in the wood slats overhead, illuminating the perfections and imperfections of her pink skin. Her fine, downy hairs glowed. How I so wanted to taste her, to bite into that glorious rump, to devour this dirty beast. A slight stirring in my stomach reflected my desire to consume her, and I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that soon she would be mine. All mine.
Falmouth finished reading, looked down upon Silverberg, and said,
Do you deny that this is nothing more than the thoughts of a perverted man seeking to consume this little girl?
Silverberg hardly shifted at all. He said into the microphone, I do deny it. If you had read closely, you would have seen that he was talking about the family pig. He bought the slaughter herd for a dinner with the Pena family and a couple of his colleagues from the university. Falmouth tilted his head, a bemused expression threatening to break through his blustery demeanor, and then flipped through his large sheaf of photocopies.
Then do you deny that this shows the novel's moral depravity? I let out an involuntary shudder when my tongue tasted her moist and salty flesh. I savored her smoky flavor. My tongue lingered on her pliant meat. Unable to contain myself any longer, I bit down.
There was still no movement from Silverberg. Except for the steady rising and falling of his chest, he might as well have been a mannequin in a stoner shirt. He said, "Moral depravity if you're a Jew or a Muslim, maybe. He's eating the damn pig." "Oh," Falmouth said, a bit deflated, which, for his girth, was quite a feat indeed. The crowd of spectators began to murmur amongst themselves. Falmouth, who had up until now ruled these proceedings with an iron fist and a scalpel tongue, began to look unsure. It was pathetic to watch someone whose career was built on a foundation of cocksure self-righteousness crack so visibly. Beads of sweat stippled upon Falmouth's bald crown like dew on a mushroom cap. His color rose. "Order! I will have order in here!" he called out while beating his gavel. "Order!" The voices of the crowd began to settle, then ceased entirely. Falmouth continued to bang his gavel, though. "I will have order!" The gavel gave one last, half-hearted bang, and then the room was filled with the preternatural silence that follows a large ruckus, the kind of silence that echoes with the ghosts of sounds, as if the walls themselves are ringing.
"Well, Mr. Expert Silverberg, you cannot deny that this is a dirty passage. My hand penetrated her vaginal cavity. A slick, hot moisture sucked greedily at my extended digits. Deeper, deeper, deeper I went until my arm was mostly consumed, and there in the far depth of her sex, I felt it. I felt it stirring there. I felt it ready to come out, ready to come into this world, ready to be. Do you deny this, Mr. Silverberg?"
A lick of spittle had formed at the corner of Falmouth's mouth and swung there like a liquid noose. Silverberg looked up from the microphone and made eye contact with Falmouth for perhaps the first, but certainly not the last time that morning.
The family cow was having trouble calving. He reached in to try and pull it out. These so-called acts of depravity you keep identifying are hardly the most damning descriptions in the book. They've ranged from the mundane to the horribly overwrought. Do you, sir, have anything you would like to share with us, or would you like me simply to point out the passages you are vainly trying to pin?